Come on, Annie. Let's go to the movies.
This is the Cinereelists, episode 477. My name is Kyle.
My name is James.
And my name is Zach.
And we're here to talk about movies, movie lists, and movie obsession for the next hour or so. James, I've been admiring your beard from over the Zoom call.
All right.
Did you cut it or trim it or shape it
I did.
recently?
I did.
You did?
Yeah. Thank you for noticing. I appreciate that. If you'd like to see my newly trimmed beard, you should definitely go check out the video version of this podcast. We are now on YouTube. Every episode from, I don't know, how many have we done? 7 or 8 probably. Last handful or so. Go to YouTube, search Cinereelists, and check out the video version of the podcast. Why not?
Did you trim it just to segue to the YouTube?
No, but I took the opportunity as presented.
That was a beautiful segue.
No, I trimmed it. Yeah, I don't know. You guys don't have facial hair, so I guess you never have the opportunity to do this. But I was just like looking in the mirror and I started trimming, and then like you trim a little too much on one side, and then you're like, oh crap, now it's lopsided. You trim on the other side. Before you know it, you've lost like an inch. That's how it happens.
Got a little out of hand.
Yep. But it was time anyway. It was getting a little out of control for sure. But beard problems. I'm all alone on this island when it comes to this podcast for some reason.
Well, now that I've seen that you've trimmed and shaped your beard, I know that you are now a happier, more well-rounded person.
Is that what that means?
Was that a pun?
No, in movie speak.
Well-rounded?
Right? Yeah, no. Once you trim your beard in a movie, that means you're back. You're back. You're out of the doldrums. You are back and ready to take on the world.
Sure.
If you shave your own beard, it means you're no longer an alcoholic. If someone shaves your beard, it means you're still an alcoholic but falling in love.
What? So if somebody pins you down and shaves your beard, you're in love?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Falling in love.
Falling.
You've never seen that happens in movies all the time. The woman will decide to shave the man's beard for him.
What movie does this happen in? I've never heard of this.
Where does she pin him down and do it?
Never pinned down. Lots of movies, James. Phenomenon.
Okay, lots of movies. One.
No, tons of them.
Logan.
Yeah.
I actually have a letterbox list related to this that I've had for years.
Okay.
And it's a list of movies that use that convention of a man shaving his beard as shorthand for him, rebirthing life or changing his ways or any of those types of things. And it is shocking how many movies lean on that story crutch for sure. And I don't understand it. Well, I mean, I understand it, but I don't agree with it.
I think it's the same thing. It's the G.I. Jane effect, where you're seeing someone shave something that you have the impression that it takes a long time to grow. Mm-hmm. And so as an audience member, you have additional stakes because you feel like not only did the character shave that thing, but the actor shaved that. And so you feel like something momentous is happening.
Interesting. So you think it's less about people with beards are disheveled and out of control or, directionless, and more about they changed their appearance and they've been working on that appearance for so long.
I think it's a little bit of that. I think in movie shorthand, if you're heavily bearded, that means you've given up in some way, shape, or form. Not all the time, but if that is your defining trait is your beard, that means you have some sort of depression or other, mental shortcoming.
You're mourning a loss.
Yes. And once you shave that beard, as well as having that transformation, you're saying, okay, I'm letting go of this past. I'm letting go of past me. Here's new me. And the best way to show new me is to get rid of facial hair.
Yeah. It's not the reason I haven't shaved my beard, but it's one of the reasons I fear is that I'm going to shave it and people are going to be like, oh, look at James. He's changing his life or whatever. And I'm like, no, when I shave my beard, it'll be because I'm tired of it, not because there's some like momentous life event. I'm just putting everybody on early notice. When the beard goes, it's not a change at all other than I no longer have facial hair. That'll be the change. That's it.
You could get a distracting face tattoo
At the same time. That
yes,
way
Of a beard.
yeah, people will not think, oh, he's trying to clean up his life. They'll, hopefully not mention it.
that is a great plan. I'm going to do that. And when people ask me about it, I'm going to be like, Zach proposed this. So I did it. Blame him. I'm going to get an exact duplicate of the Mike Tyson tattoo. How about that?
Please. Yes.
Can you imagine actually walking around the world with that? Like an exact copy of the Mike Tyson tattoo on your face?
No.
That would be great. Guys, we're not here to talk about tattoos or beards, though. We're here to talk about movies, which we're going to do. We're going to talk about a lot of them this episode. But first, we're going to mention that we have a Patreon account. You can find it at patreon.com/Cinereelists. Support the podcast, get extra after show audio, as well as other Cinerealist swag. Go check it out. See what's available there. Also, we are on a tear to ask our listeners to help us out with Apple podcast reviews. So Apple Podcasts has a system where people leave reviews. These reviews are important not only to the rankings on Apple Podcasts, but it's important to us because we need to achieve the magic number of 200 Apple Podcast reviews in order to be qualified to be Rotten Tomatoes critics. So we're slowly marching towards that golden number. If you leave a review on Apple Podcasts for us, then and you also leave text on that review, not just a star rating, 5 stars only, then we will read it on the podcast. And we got a new one this week. This review is from user Disney movies are the best. One word. It's a long name. The subject of this review is A+ podcast! Exclamation point. Feels very much like an eBay feedback.
This podcast came to me on time. It was in good condition.
Right, for sure. Best seller ever. All right. The text of this review is, this is a great podcast for movie buffs, movie lovers, movie fanatics, and people like myself that do not fit into any of those categories, but simply like movies.
They don't love movies. They like movies.
Movie likers.
Movie likers are allowed to listen. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love movie likers. I highly recommend this podcast. Exclamation point. End of review.
Nice.
It didn't say that last part. I added that.
Disney is the best. Was it DA or the?
It's literally the letter R and then the best.
Nice.
So they're a Disney fan. Good to know.
Does that include when someone says, okay, Disney is the best, are they saying like Disney cartoons, or are they including Marvel and all the other Disney owned things, Avatar?
I'm pretty sure they're referring to 20th century Disney when they say Disney is the best.
What does 20th century Disney mean? What is that? You're talking about animated movies?
Yeah, animated movies.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So like is Parent Trap not included in that?
I don't know Disney movies are the best or user personally, so I can't say if they are or not, but I would default if I talk to someone for the first time and they say, "Oh, I love Disney," I'm going to assume they mean Disney animated movies and more so the ones from the 20th century.
Okay. Nice.
All right. We also got a listener email this week that we're going to read and talk about.
We did.
You also can send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com and we'll read it and discuss it on the podcast. Zach, do you have that email?
I do. This one is from Josh, and it says, "Good day, Kyle, James, and Zach. As always, loving the podcast. Been a while since I wrote in. A while ago, you were speculating if I was into punk. Can confirm punk is life. Now, I wanted to pause here. I did a deep dive into punk music because of this email.
Okay.
Because I realized I wasn't exactly sure what punk music was. I knew it was countercultural. That's about it. So I looked up the most famous punk bands. And can I just get your hot take on these bands and tell me if they truly are punk or not?
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Yes, punk.
I've never heard a Ramones song, but
yes,
Yeah, you have.
Oh my
no
gosh.
clue who they are. But when I hear the Ramones, I think that if I told people my favorite band was the Ramones, I think that would make me cool. Like that sounds like a cool band to be your favorite.
That's your favorite band when you first discover punk. Like, yeah, I love the Ramones.
Today, Kyle.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. The Clash.
Yes.
Punk.
Yeah. Okay. Black Flag, which is a
Very punk
band I've
yes.
never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
You've heard of Henry Rollins, haven't you?
No, I haven't. My church has the same logo as Black Flag. I'm just noticing right now.
Four black bars.
Yeah, but kind of unevenly spaced. Literally, that's the logo of my church.
Yeah.
we might have to put this on Instagram.
I think you need to do a side by side. Yes,
That's amazing. Dead Kennedys, which does not sound like a band name to me.
yeah. Jello Biafra. It's very punk.
Yeah.
Is that English?
That's the lead singer.
Okay. Bad Brains.
Yes.
Is that like a well-known band? Because I've never heard that before.
It's well known amongst people who know about punk bands.
Okay, and then the last one Google suggested was Green Day, which I'd be shocked to find out if they're punk music.
They're pop.
Green
punk.
Day is, but yeah, that led to Blink 182 and kind of the 90s, 2000s punk scene.
Okay. Did I hit the major? Are these the top punk bands?
I would say some of them. Yeah. I mean, like, there's also, you didn't get into like Minor Threat or didn't get into like, what band did Operation Ivy become? Rancid.
Yeah. Rancid.
Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it covers.
Sex Pistols is a huge 70s pop punk band.
That covers most of the ones that like
The Beatles.
people might know. But
That's great.
What, Kyle? What's a punk band most people don't know of that's good?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot here.
Oh, like Fugazi?
Yeah, you're just Googling now. I don't know. Like, I mean, I like Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of well known, but they're definitely not as well known as these other bands.
They're well known for like one or two songs, but they haven't existed as a popular band in a long time. So,
No.
Unless you knew them at the time.
I would say my favorite not known punk band is probably Leftover Crack.
Okay. I don't know that one, but
They're like crustcore.
okay. Interesting.
All right.
I would go with Reviver. Have you ever listened to Reviver?
I have not heard of Reviver. No.
They're awesome. RIVR is their name, and punk music is their game. Check them out.
It sounds like a metal punk band.
It's not.
Okay.
All right. Back to Josh's email.
Okay.
And again, if you email us and you're into something like punk, we'll probably talk about it. So feel free to email us whatever random stuff you're into. Okay. He said, I thought I would let you know the list of #1 films from every last 10 top 10. It's ticked over 100 films. He made a letterbox list with all of our #1 films from our previous top 10 last 10s, which is apropos because today we're doing a last 10 top 10.
Yeah.
But also, how cool is this? I'm looking through this list right now, and it's a lot of really great movies.
Sure. I like the list because not only is it great movies, but it's not necessarily movies that you'd find like on somebody's top 100 list, but it's still movies that somebody at some point on this podcast enjoyed enough to rank above 10 others or 9 others rather.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that aspect of it.
Is it safe to say that both of you have seen more than 50% of this list?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah.
So I'm only at 45% of this list.
Oh,
which
really?
means I have not been listening to your number one recommendations.
Yeah, Kyle doesn't care about our suggestions. He just lets it roll right off him like a water off a duck's back.
That's exactly how I have viewed this podcast for 6 years.
Shameful.
Let it roll right off me.
Shameful. Absolutely
Anyways,
shameful.
here is a game idea. I have no idea will work or not. Okay, so we love this. We play movie games sometimes on the show. We are always up for new suggestions of games. I'm going to summarize his game.
Okay.
Essentially, what he suggests we do is when we do a last 10 top 10, we only have 9 real movies and 1 movie we make up. And we just talk about that movie in the list like the other movies we've seen. And then at the end of the show, we guess which one the person had made up out of whole cloth. And I think that's a fun idea. But not for a top 10 last 10, because then we literally have to just make up stuff for like 4 minutes about a movie and it burns one of our top 10 slots. But I think as a separate game, this could be really good.
Sure.
So this is the modification I propose. We each scour Letterboxd or IMDb or whatever, and we find 2 movies that are totally real, and then we make up a movie that's fake. So we tell the other players the name of the movie, the cast, the year, the plot description, all of that, and we use the real ones for the real movies we found, and then the made up ones for the fake movie, and then we try to guess which one's real. It's kind of like a new version of Movie Bluff. What do you guys think?
Would we have to have seen these movies? No. So we can, okay.
Yeah, so you're looking for like movies that sound crazy or unbelievable or something like that.
Okay.
I'm down.
Yeah, I think it'd be fun to play.
Cool. He also wants to do more Patreon games with listeners, and I think that's a great idea. So we should totally have him on to play My Kid Could Paint That with us. Much, much appreciated all the effort you put in, Josh.
Nice.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. And you ever want to talk punk, send us an email.
For sure.
Or you can just send me one too. We can go off topic here.
Josh, if you want to make me a punk playlist, feel free. I have Spotify.
Zach, I made you a punk playlist earlier this year.
You made me one. I want one from Josh.
But this just goes to show you did not learn or pay attention to that at all because you were Googling punk, even after I made you a primer on the history of punk.
I thought you made me a metal list.
There's definitely a punk list. It's got Blondie on there because they were proto-punk. We'll get into it later, but you and I got some. You got some explaining to do.
You made me a lot of lists.
Speaking of lists, we're gonna go over one this week. We're gonna do our Cinereelists traditional list. This is a list format we created in the early days of the podcast and have continued for literally years now. It's a format that has inspired other podcasts to steal the format. They ask normally, but to borrow the format for their own podcast. It's one that we enjoy doing. It's our top 10 last 10.
Top 10, top 10, and top 10, last 10, and last 10, and a last 10, last 10, and top 10, top 10, and top 10, and top 10, and last 10, last 10, and last 10, and last 10, and top 10.
What is a top 10 last 10, Kyle?
A top 10 last 10 is where we take the last 10 movies we saw and we rank them against each other. That's the only criteria. Just chronologically, the last 10 you took, set at number 10 all the way through number 1 and rank them.
You got it. It's a fun list because the movies start awful, and as we go down the list, they get better and better. Let's jump into it. I'll start with my number 10, which is a movie on Netflix titled Thunder Force. This is a comedy. On Wikipedia, they call it a superhero comedy, which it's pretty much that. Directed by Ben Falcone, starring Melissa McCarthy, Octavia Spencer, Melissa Leo, and Jason Bateman, amongst others. And this movie's bad. I mean, it's pretty it's pretty bad, I would say.
I like this movie.
I wasn't mad at it. Like it wasn't offensively awful. And there are moments where my spirits were lifted, I would say. I never laughed or even like chuffed at anything that happened. Like the only interesting thing about the movie to me is the Jason Bateman performance and like kind of the conceit of just him existing in this movie and his attitude and some of the character arc that they gave him. But he's definitely not the lead. The two leads are Melissa McCarthy and Octavia Spencer, and they're fine with what the movie's asking them to do. It's just so surface level. And there was just nothing unpredictable about the movie except for the Jason Bateman performance and the story conceit they give him. So I found that to be interesting, but overall, it is absolutely a movie that I am going to forget that I saw the moment I stop talking about it, which is right now. My number 10, Thunder Force.
That's awesome. Well, my number 10 is from 1931. It's called Cimarron, and this is a Best Picture winner. So in my effort to watch all the Best Picture winners through Academy Awards history, I watched Cimarron. And don't get me wrong, this movie actually is pretty entertaining. I wasn't mad watching it from an entertainment perspective, and the first 5 minutes are totally worth watching. So you could turn it off after the first 5 minutes, but the first 5 minutes, essentially this movie is about the Oklahoma land rush. So that's when they opened up Oklahoma for people to get land. And they essentially, like at noon on a certain day, you could cross the border, and whoever got to a plot of land first got the land. And so there's just this massive race with, wagons and horses and on foot. And there's one guy on a bicycle. And it was just awesome to watch because it's from 1931. And there's just thousands of extras all just reenacting this land rush. And it was actually really cool to see. So I love that. So this movie started off with a bang. But I found it to be very racist. And that was honestly distracting for much of the movie. Anytime there was an American Indian character on screen, someone would just randomly say like how just dirty and savage they were for apropos of nothing. There was lots of things like that. There's a character who's African American, and it's such a just a awful stereotype. And then that character dies, and he's given the most pathetic afterthought death. It's really disturbing, I think. The main character is not someone you want to root for at all. He's presented as like this like bastion of moral kind of virtue, but then he's just not a good guy. I don't know. It's such an uneven film. But it's a Western. It was the only Western to win Best Picture for decades and decades until I think Dances with Wolves was the next one. But yeah, I didn't ultimately like it that much, but I can't say it wasn't entertaining to watch. So I'm not mad at it. Cimarron from 1931.
So most people are going to counter that just because it's a Best Picture winner.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, my number 10 is a sci-fi movie from 1972, and this is Silent Running. This movie is starring Bruce Dern, and that's about it of people you would know. This movie, it takes place in the near future for 1972, which I think is actually like 2009 in the movie. And in this universe, the Earth has become pretty much uninhabitable. And Bruce Dern is on a spaceship with some other, I guess you call them astronauts, with keeping a forest biome alive on this spaceship. There is basically like a research, like can we bring back natural life to the Earth? And early in the movie, the world government decides that this is a pointless mission, and we're going to have all the astronauts return to Earth and have them just eject these domes of trees into space. And Bruce Dern, being the ecologist, revolts and steals the spaceship and travels off farther into space to save the trees. That's the first 30 minutes of this movie, and that's all that happens. This movie then goes on for another hour and is pretty much Bruce Dern hanging out in the forest in space. Nothing else is really going on. It gets kind of boring. The reason people watch this movie is because of the director. It's directed by Douglas Trumbull, who did the effects on 2001: A Space Odyssey. So this is supposed to be like his big chance to say, hey, you're a great effects artist. How would you make your own movie? And this movie just goes to kind of prove that just because you're good at one part of filmmaking, does that mean you're a good filmmaker? And this is definitely the case with this. The models of the spaceships are super intricate, but they're lit in such a way where like you can tell they're models. Like you watch Star Wars, you watch 2001, you obviously know this is a model. This is not a real spaceship. But those ships are filmed and shot and lighted in such a way where they feel dynamic and moving and real. And you're watching Silent Running, and it just looks like someone's shooting a plastic model. That's all it looks like to me. There were some pretty cool, I think they called them droids, which were like these, they kind of look like television sets walking on two legs, which are actually people who had their legs amputated were walking on their hands inside these suits. They were a pretty cool addition, and they actually inspired George Lucas to create R2-D2 and C-3PO. So this is like another of these movies where I think it led to other great things, but as a movie itself, it's not that great, and it's really only worth watching if you want to see some like sci-fi movie history. So that's Silent Running. My number 10.
Never heard of it.
I liked Silent Running.
What did you like about it?
The robots.
Yeah, the robots are cool.
All right.
That's about it.
My number 9 is a documentary on a Netflix. It just won the Academy Award for Best Documentary, My Octopus Teacher, which I watched before the Academy Awards. I mean, I gave it a 2.5. Another movie I was not mad at, but I do not understand the hype for sure. I mean, actually, that's pretty low for a documentary for me. Like
yeah,
2.5 is low because the chances are good if I'm going to watch something, I'm already interested in it, and you already have me. You just like, this is your opportunity to slide down the scale as opposed to work up it. And My Octopus Teacher, have you guys seen it?
Not yet.
There are some interesting, I wouldn't say twists or surprises. They're just like the format is different. And I think some people found that format charming, and I found it contrived and a little creepy. And so when people on camera are saying things that are meant to be taken as earnest, and instead you're just like, why are you in love with an octopus? Like, this thing doesn't understand who you are or what you're about. You're just this foreign object you're swimming around with. Like, it's not that the octopus is in love with you, or like there's insinuations made that like there's some level of like a romantic connection between this octopus and this guy swimming around with it. And I didn't find it scientifically romantic. I found it creepily romantic. Like the guy was hinging a lot of his emotions on what happens to this octopus. Now, I think the guy who is the main subject of the documentary, other than the octopus, is a smart guy, obviously. And I don't think he is literally hinging his emotions on it, but it's played up like that so much that, like I said, it just felt like it was contrived in order to manipulate you as the audience into being sympathetic towards him and the octopus. And it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way throughout. And so there are interesting things in it. I get why people would like it, but it did not work for me. And it definitely was not my favorite documentary of last year.
So this is about a romance between a man and an octopus? I thought it was about like a friendship.
Yeah. I mean, if it had stayed in the friendship realm as far as the vibes went for me, maybe it would have worked better. But to me, I don't talk about my friends in the way that this guy talked about the octopus. It felt a little bit like somebody who's into feet talking about feet. You know what I mean? Like they were fetishizing the octopus, and that to me was distracting from the bigger goal that they were trying to get accomplished. So my number 9.
Okay, well, my number 9 is a little bit different. It's called Gabriel Over the White House, and it's from 1933. And the title is very descriptive. It's about the angel Gabriel enacting miracles over the White House in the 30s. There is a guy that gets elected president. He's just kind of like a playboy, cavalier. He's not intending to do much to help anyone. He's just a guy that could get elected president, and then he was just having a good time being president. Anyways, he gets in a near fatal car accident. And when he wakes up, he's visited by the angel Gabriel, who tells him, look, I'm going to let you stay alive, and you're going to actually do things to help people. And so then he wakes up, totally different personality. He's all business. And it's like wish fulfillment. If you get annoyed that politicians don't do anything, he like only does things. And like he's unwavering from his value system kind of a thing. I found it kind of troubling because he just goes into full authoritarian mode. So like he like calls up the military and has the military go and be his police force to like clean up crime. And he just does all these things. It's just like full on dictator mode. And the whole movie is relatively cheesy. I would say it's like watching a Frank Capra movie, not directed by Frank Capra. So it's like not charming anymore. But it's kind of an oddity. It was, it's fun to watch something so brazenly with a message about like I wish our government would do this kind of a thing. And I enjoyed it. And well, I was totally neutral. It got a 2.5 for me out of 5. But it's called Gabriel Over the White House, 1933.
Did Frank Capra direct It's a Wonderful Life?
He did.
Okay. So that kind of movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Or like Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. That kind of
yeah.
Movie. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, my number 9 is also a movie I was rather neutral on. It's also a documentary, and this is the last blockbuster from 2020. This is a movie that is about just what it says. It's about the last Blockbuster store in the country, which I believe is in Oregon. And it kind of gives you sort of a history of Blockbuster, which was interesting. It then focuses sort of on this last Blockbuster store and, how does it stay open and sort of what's the draw and what's the appeal of Blockbuster. And then it realizes that it's only used 60 minutes and has got 30 minutes left and then doesn't know what to do with itself anymore. So it just kind of keeps hanging on Blockbuster and then brings in a bunch of B and C list celebrities to talk about Blockbuster. And it really could have been a VH1 I Love Blockbuster special. It did not need to be a 90-minute feature-length film. It was interesting, especially I think the history of Blockbuster. I know personally, I guess I'm nostalgic for video rental, but not Blockbuster itself.
Agreed.
Like for me, Blockbuster was the big ugly corporate overlord versus the small like video station, Video Max options that were run by families that I could choose from in Madison. And Zach, you're nodding your head. You have the same, obviously same selections.
Totally agree.
Where this movie, it sees Blockbuster as like the young little scrappy guy just trying to hang in there in the world of digital and streaming. So it's just sort of a interesting reframing of Blockbuster, looking at it now versus how it was looked at 20, 30 years ago. But again, it kind of loses steam and doesn't really know what to do with itself. So it brings in a bunch of B and C list celebrities to talk about Blockbuster and make jokes and like smell a Blockbuster box and click it and go down that nostalgia path. And it's fine. I think if it's something you want to put on in the background, you can easily just have it in the background. It's not going to offend anyone, but you don't need to like give it your full devoted 90 minutes of attention.
I kind of agree with you, Kyle. It was fun to watch, and I did like hearing the history of Blockbuster. But once they started talking about what it smelled like in Blockbuster and geeking out over the clamshell, I was done.
It's super weird to see a video rental store with Blu-rays on the shelf also. Like that just does not it does not compute in my head at all.
I would love that. If I could go and there's the whole Criterion collection on Blu-ray.
Yeah, it's called Netflix.
Yeah, but no. Then that's streaming. Streaming doesn't look as good as...
No. Netflix DVD.
Yeah, okay. Do they have Blu-rays?
Oh, yeah. They got and Criterion.
Okay, well.
In fact, there might be one coming up soon on this list. Stay tuned.
Wow.
What a teaser. My number 8 is Mortal Kombat. This is the recent reboot of the franchise on HBO Max and in theaters. And I would say I am a nostalgic fan of the 90s version of Mortal Kombat. Like, I am absolutely ready to admit that the original Mortal Kombat theatrical movie is not good, for sure. But I have an attachment to it because I saw it in high school, maybe just out of high school, and I was way into Mortal Kombat. All my friends were. We all went. It was stupid, but fun to watch. And so I've always wondered why they didn't fully reboot Mortal Kombat. Now they have. And I mean, this isn't, it's not an awful version of Mortal Kombat, I would say. It has all the trappings of what you'd expect from a Mortal Kombat movie, and they definitely treat things more seriously than that original one did. They try to break out of the tournament format that the games are stuck in and give you more of backstory with certain characters. There's a character that they invented whole cloth for this version of the movie, which is interesting because there's only 1,000 Mortal Kombat characters to choose from. Instead, they're going to invent one. But it made sense what they did in the movie with this new character, and it pushed another character, it gave them more of a history for you to chew on. All that being said, it's still just a Mortal Kombat movie where these characters just come in and out of the movie, and some of them are there for literally less than a minute, and other characters are there for the full runtime, and they're all just connected in the most thinnest of ways, I would say. And so kind of my final thoughts on Mortal Kombat the reboot is this is probably as good as a Mortal Kombat movie gets, and is still reminiscent of the game itself. The only way you make a better Mortal Kombat movie is if you just decide you're not going to do a representation of the game in a way that's close to what the game, the game story gives you over the course of playing it. And so I'm not sure they're ever going to do that, but who knows? For now, I guess we live with this. I gave it 3 stars on Letterboxd for what it's worth. My number 8.
Cool. My number 8 is The Black Knight from 1954. This is a King Arthur movie starring Alan Ladd, and he plays a blacksmith, and he falls in love with this noble woman, and their love can never be because he would have to be a knight in order to be with her. He witnesses a plot to overthrow King Arthur, and so he has to he goes in disguise as the Black Knight to kind of foil the plot, and everyone's trying to figure out who the Black Knight is. And Kyle, you'll like this. There's even a human sacrifice druid ceremony at Stonehenge in the movie.
Why would I like that?
You love the druids.
Oh, I thought you meant I love human sacrifice.
No. I don't know your stance. And so this movie's really fun. I love King Arthur movies, like Knights of the Round Table, and I love all that. So automatically, I'm going to like a movie that takes place in this time period. I will say, it was all pretty awesome, actually, except the main character was kind of like watching paint dry. He was not charismatic at all. He was poorly cast as the main actor in it. Definitely the weakest part, but everything around it was great. And I liked his character. I thought it was all fun. It was a mismatch, I thought. But yeah, I enjoyed The Black Knight quite a bit. I would watch The Black Knight 2, Black Knight 3. I would be in for that. So I gave it 3.5 stars on Letterboxd.
Have you seen The Black Knight starring what's his name from Bad Boys? Martin Lawrence.
No.
You got to do that one next.
Okay. Do you think it's like a remake of this one?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah. Most likely.
All right. My number 8 is the aforementioned Criterion Blu-ray from Netflix DVD. And this is Blow Up from 1966. Now, if you were to read a plot description of this movie, like on IMDb or Letterboxd, it would say something like a photographer in London, discovers in the background of his pictures something sinister happening, and then dives deeper into trying to figure out what exactly is going on. Which sounds super compelling. Like, to me, that sounds like the plot of The Conversation, right? The Conversation is instead about a sound recorder who's just recording, he's recording a square, and then he thinks he hears something sinister happening, and then like obsesses about what is actually happening in this recording. Blow Up is not about that whatsoever. It is about a photographer, and at some point in the movie, he's out like in a park taking photos, and he starts to think that maybe something weird is happening in the background of his photos, but it never goes into like that full obsession. This is really more just like a pastiche movie about a photographer who's lost his creative mojo and doesn't quite know what to do with himself. And I honestly found that kind of boring. Maybe because I was expecting something a little bit more plot heavy, something a little bit more thrillery or mystery. That's why I was not into it. But just watching this guy exist in like swinging 60s London was not terribly thrilling. And on top of that, he is not a good person. Like, he is not a character or a person I wanted to see succeed or be around. And in fact, he's a sexual assaulter. Like, there is some Me Too level stuff happening in this movie where he is taking advantage of young models who want to be photographed. And he's like, yeah, come back to my studio, come to this changing room, no clothes for you. And then goes from there. I don't know. I know this is a well-regarded movie. It's on a bunch of lists. It's directed by Michelangelo Antonioni. I think I got that right.
Antonioni.
Thank you very much. Who is another well-regarded director. Here it comes. I just knew it was coming. I just saw James. Anyway, he is a very well-directed or well-respected director. I've seen his other movie, La Ventura. He's done a bunch of others on top of that. But maybe because this is sort of within, even though it's in English, it's filmed in London, it kind of does have a Italian neorealism feel to it. And on top of it being,
it's not neorealistic at all. It's Italian.
It's Italian. But he is from the Italian neorealistic tradition.
It's very not neorealistic, but okay. It is Italian from the 60s.
It is Italian.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. But I guess for me, the lack of plot and the rather terrible main character just kind of had me check out from this movie. It does end with a mime tennis match, and that was pretty awesome. I was kind of digging that, but it was too little too late for me. So that's my number 8, Blow Up.
That's awesome. Well, glad you finally caught up with it, even if it wasn't your favorite.
No, it was not.
James, what do you got?
My number 7 is Ammonite from 2020. This is a movie that I just caught up with. I think it was a movie that was talked about at the end of the year as like potential awards, an awards potential, and then that didn't pan out. It never fully, got nominated. But it's good. I gave it a 3, and in retrospect, I probably would give it like a 3.5. Really, if I was to amend that, I think it's better than a 3. I'm not quite sure what I was thinking in the moment, but it's a romantic drama directed by Francis Lee, starring primarily Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. Kate Winslet plays a paleontologist. The time setting is the 1840s, so this is like not a time where too many women are paleontologists. In fact, paleontology itself is like kind of a new science for the most part, and she's kind of famous for being not hermited, but she does her paleontology on her own. She doesn't work on a team of paleontologists. She discovers all these things on her own, and then of course men take the credit for it. But people in the community know that she's like one of the top paleontologists. So the Saoirse Ronan character enters her life. She's not a paleontologist. She's just a woman that kind of like enters her life through a series of circumstances that don't really matter. And then the movie turns into a romance between Kate Winslet and Saoirse Ronan. I'm not spoiling anything. It's very obvious from the get-go that that's what's going to happen in this movie. And that's probably why it ended up at like a 3. Like my gut initial reaction is that they're just like, they held your hand into where the movie goes. And I just had a hard time watching it. Like the performances were great, and I didn't really have any huge issues with the movie. It is what it is, but I couldn't help but just think like, I just want to watch Portrait of a Lady on Fire again. Like it was very similar to Portrait of a Lady on Fire in structure. And I believe that is the better movie, but that doesn't make this one a bad one for sure. I'm interested in the director. She directed another movie called God's Own Country that has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's a live action drama. I will be checking that out at some point. So if I hated that movie, I would not be interested in others from this director. I definitely don't hate Ammonite, but it is my number 7 on this list.
Nice. Haven't checked that out yet. My number 7 is a documentary called Operation Varsity Blues: The College Admissions Scandal. And this documentary is so good. It's really, really well made. And mostly because there's a ton of reenactments, which normally I do not like in documentaries. But the reenactments are acted by Matthew Modine, and he is perfect in this role. So I would say a good 60% of this movie is Matthew Modine reenacting actual conversations. And all these conversations are taken from like cell phone records and stuff like this, recovered by the FBI. If you remember, this is the college admissions scandal where like the wealthy, famous people were bribing and, college administrations and pretending like their students were athletes when they really weren't, just to get into like Ivy League schools and that kind of thing.
Yeah, like Felicity Huffman and Aunt Becky.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And anyways, it's so smooth to watch. This thing just is very well crafted. And again, I really, really like Matthew Modine's performance in it. It's very understated. It's awesome. And so if you're at all curious about the college admission scandal, this goes deep into it. It's very fun to watch. It's called Operation Varsity Blues, and it came out this year.
Nice.
I think it's on Netflix.
Is that where you watch it?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. My number 7 is a 2011 movie directed by David Fincher. This actually completes David Fincher's filmography for me, and this is The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. This is based on the book by Stieg Larsson about a hacker and a writer who are investigating a murder. That's a very simplified version of the plot, but that's kind of more or less what it's about. And I don't know if I enjoyed this movie. It's David Fincher. Obviously, he knows how to direct a movie. Like, there's no question about that. And the cast is great. You've got Daniel Craig is in this, playing the writer. You have Rooney Mara, who plays the hacker whose name is Lisbeth, and she is awesome. Christopher Plummer, Stellan Skarsgård, Robin Wright. It's got a really good cast. And I think this is a movie that maybe a lot of people like. But I found it unenjoyable for a couple things. Number one, there are some pretty heavy things that happen to Lisbeth early in this movie. And she has to deal with a lot of assault, and they depict that assault, and it's not fun to watch. And for me, it's just not something that a world I really want to exist in. On top of that, you have kind of this parallel story between the Daniel Craig character and the Rooney Mara character, and it really isn't for like the last 45 minutes till they finally meet up, and the whole finale just kind of felt rushed. It kind of felt like there was 4 different plot lines they had to wrap up in the third act, and that could just be a factor of it being an adaptation of a book. I have not read the book. I don't know what the pacing of the book is. This seems like maybe this would have served better as like a miniseries versus a movie, because it definitely felt kind of rushed, and it just felt like I was watching 2 different movies for the good 2 hours of it before they all kind of came together at the end. So I understand people like this movie, and I can see why, but for me, it was not my cup of tea.
Kyle, I'm sure you're tired of this topic right now because you just watched that movie, but you should definitely watch The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo from 2009, which is the Swedish version of the series.
Okay.
It's differently toned and like not so heavy and like syrupy like Fincher's version is. It's got Noomi Rapace, who's a person you've seen on film before. It's not like some unknown actor. And Michael Nyquist, I think is how you say his name, plays the reporter, which is just a different vibe for sure than, Daniel Craig. And it's complete. They did all 3 movies. Some of the pacing issues I had with Fincher's version is it kind of felt like he focused on what he wanted to focus on as opposed to what's in the book, assuming that the 2009 one is closer to the book. And so, I love Fincher, obviously, but I prefer the 2009 version of Girl with the Dragon Tattoo head over tails over Fincher's version for sure. And and there's a lot of movie there to watch once you get past that, because there's 3 movies. So consider that a suggestion. My number 6.
Check it out. Yeah. When I'm ready to get back into the world, I'll check it out.
For sure. My number 6 is Another Round from 2020. This is a movie you guys have been asking me to watch or suggesting that I watch, and I watched it. I gave it a 3.5, and it's fine. I didn't necessarily expect to love this, and I actively fought the feeling that I should anti-love this just because you guys recommended it so much. You know what I mean? Like I could see myself just kind of being like watching this with my arms folded, like, okay, movie, prove to me you're worthy of my time. So I actively fought trying to do that, and I enjoy the movie. I'm just can't fully wrap my head around why people love it so much. Like, I understand the conceit is unique, the way they treat the idea of people drinking alcohol to heighten themselves socially and just like open their mind to things, get a little less in their head about things, and using alcohol to do that. It's just a very adult way to treat alcohol, right? And it's not a way that we treat alcohol here in the US. And I have no idea where is this movie from? Sweden? Well, I forget.
Denmark.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's how they think of alcohol, but it's definitely not how we think of it here. It's kind of like, I don't know how we treat it, but we don't treat it like this for sure. And so I get that all of those things are unique about it, especially to us Americans, but I didn't get it. It was well acted, but it didn't push over the top for me beyond the concept and those things. And so I like it, but I liked 5 other movies better on my list. My number 6, Another Round.
It's like you feel bad that you didn't like it more.
I don't feel bad. I just want to, I don't know. I don't feel bad.
I know for me, just the ending was a half-star bump right there,
Yeah,
because
for
the ending
sure.
was so unique and well executed that it elevated at least part of the movie for me.
Totally agree. I gave it 4 stars, which is just a half star more than you, James.
Sure.
Yeah, also 4 stars.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, my number 6 is Nanook of the North from 1922.
Nanook of the North.
Yeah. This is a very, very early documentary. It's from the 20s, obviously, and it follows an Inuit family in the Arctic Circle. And this is one I've been meaning to watch for a long time because it's very well regarded for being this early adventurous documentary, because he had to take, bulky equipment to the Arctic Circle and follow around this family in kind of harsh, conditions. It's definitely biting off a lot to chew. And he captures some really awesome stuff. They go on like hunts and they build igloos, and we get to watch it all kind of play out. I would say it's super entertaining. It's really great visuals and to see how things were done. And this was 100 years ago, so it was closer to before, modernism creeps into everything and changes way of lives. There's a lot of history of the making of this movie that you could read up on. There's definitely some shots that were staged or done specifically for the documentary. He's got 2 wives in this film, and I don't think those are his actual wives, things like that. So there's artifice there. But the craft of documentary was still being determined, it wasn't breaking rules. The rules hadn't been made yet. And no matter what is real versus staged, there's still maybe they staged the hunt on the seal, but they still hunt a seal. So even if they weren't going to naturally, they still do in the same way that they would have. So I found it very interesting. I'm sure there are a lot of cultural insensitivities included about the Inuit people. They have them listening to a phonograph and just chuckling the whole time listening to it. And I'm pretty sure he was already well aware of phonographs. This was not the first time he'd been introduced to this technology. They just kind of faked it as if he had never seen a phonograph before. So things like that. But you do kind of grow an affection for this guy. The main character, I think a couple years after filming, died on a hunt in the Arctic Circle. So there's a lot there. I found it very much worth the watch. And Nanook of the North from 1922.
Nice. I think my parents used to call me Nanook of the North when I was a kid, when I got all bundled up for winter.
Great.
All right.
I'll see the movie someday. My number 6 is a sci-fi film from 1954. It is called Them, with an exclamation point at the end. You may notice there's several sci-fi movies on my list. I found 2 lists of top 100 sci-fi movies, and I found all the movies that appeared on both lists and then added those to my watch list, and I've been working through some of those. So that's why I've got a little bit of a sci-fi run going on. Anyway, Them is a movie about giant atomic ants attacking a town in New Mexico. And this is a fun B-action monster movie for the American atomic age. I think this movie led to a lot of other movies about radioactive insert creature here coming from the desert and attacking towns. And it's a movie that you have to watch through 1950s lenses. Obviously the ants are giant puppets with some guy behind them just swinging them back and forth. They don't look very realistic, but that's fine. It's not, high-end filmmaking. We're not watching 2001 here or anything like that. But it still actually is kind of fun filmmaking. They do a good job of not really showing you what the monster is until the third act. That's something that we see now, with movies with Jaws and whatnot. They kind of hide the monster from you. They give the ants this really eerie chirp, and every time before something bad happens, there's this kind of chirping happening in the background. And it's also fun to watch a movie where, like, a guy from the FBI could throw on some military fatigues and lead a bunch of troops through like the the tunnels of LA and the sewers to fight giant ants. So, if I would say if you want to check out like what does a B monster movie from the 50s look like, them's probably a good place to start. But it's not a genre that you have to dive too deep into.
Cool.
My number 5 is from 2020. It's a horror movie titled The Empty Man. I don't know if you guys have heard about this movie, but it's definitely going around, I would say. It's got buzz. I'm just gonna say that. It's a buzz bin movie for sure. This is a movie that came out last year in October and generally got ignored. It's mid-pandemic. How many theaters were open in October? Not many, for sure, but it had sat on the shelf for like 2 or 3 years. And when 20th Century Fox sold to Disney didn't know what to do with it. It got horrible test screening scores. So they just kind of dumped it in the theaters mid-pandemic. And then it wasn't until it hit VOD within the last couple months that people have started to find it. And it's slowly gained an audience, I would say, which is where I heard about it, is people discovering it on VOD. And I watched it and I enjoyed it as well. I would compare it with the films of Richard Kelly. So it's like Donnie Darko and Southland Tales. It's probably like a weird hybrid of those, not in the content or plot or anything like that, just the vibe that I get from the movie. It's like a movie that's aiming much higher than its station in life, and the attempts, while they don't always hit perfectly, the attempt is interesting enough that when it doesn't hit, you're like, oh, well, he really swung at that. And even though it wasn't a full connection with the ball, I don't know what's up with this baseball pun comparison, but yeah, it's at least an interesting failure at minimum. And when it actually hits, it's awesome. And Empty Man is definitely that kind of horror movie. It's a supernatural horror movie, so it's non-gory. It's more thriller-esque, but it has shades of Southland Tales in that it's a series of stories that are all related, but also not related. It's very hard to describe this movie. If you look at the poster, it just looks like generic horror movie. I understand why people overlooked it. I don't think my opinion of it will grow in the future like it has with Southland Tales, Richard Kelly's kind of mess of a movie. But I understand why people are attaching themselves to it and passing it around as a word of mouth movie. I think it's definitely worth seeing if those types of movies are what you're into. It's my number 5, The Empty Man.
Cool.
It's, interestingly, too, it has like a 30-minute segment at the beginning before the title. And that part of the story has very little to do with the rest of the movie. And the entire movie is an hour and 38, or sorry, it's 2 hours and 28 minutes. No, 2 hours, 18 minutes long. Yeah, it's a long movie for what kind of looks like a Slender Man movie. It should be like an hour and a half, really. But anyway, my number 5.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm looking at this poster, and it is very generic horror movie. Like long, tight letters etched in white on a black background.
Okay, my number 5 is from 2018. It's called Radium Girls. And this is based on a true story about watch painters from the 1920s. So back in the 20s, a bunch of women would work in watch shops, and they would paint radium onto the watch faces, and that's what would make them glow in the dark. And it's like a radioactive material. In order to paint them, they would lick the brush and then paint the radium on the watches, and then lick the brush again and then paint more radium. And it's kind of like, finding out that tobacco is bad for you. Like
Sure.
these watch companies knew radium was poison way before anyone else knew, and they suppressed the knowledge, knowing that women were getting very, very sick and dying from radium poisoning, from radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it follows this one family of sisters. They're poor. They all work in this watch shop. The older sister dies from radiation poisoning. The second sister gets sick with radiation poisoning. And then they are trying to basically fight the system to get this practice ended in America of using radioactive paint on these watches. I found it super compelling. I was so into this movie. I think it's well acted. It's well paced. It was a great little film about this period of history that I didn't know anything about. It's definitely sad because, people are going through horrible medical conditions because of poor working conditions that are out of their control, all of that kind of stuff. I thought it was really well done, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's Radium Girls from just recently.
Nice. For my number 5, I always keep these lists to be first-time watches, right? I never include rewatches on it. But this movie is a rewatch only because I had this movie marked on Letterboxd, and when I was done watching it, I had no memory of this movie from before whatsoever. It felt like a first-time watch to me.
Amazing.
And this is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome is an interesting movie because I'm pretty sure I read that this script started off as not a Mad Max movie.
Oh, really?
And then they took the script, they added some Mad Max elements to it, and created, and made it into exist in the Mad Max world. But you could definitely tell that this is kind of a patched together story because it starts like a traditional awesome Mad Max movie where Max comes upon the town, I can't remember what it's called, the town that Tina Turner's running, right? She plays the queen, and this town has the Thunderdome in it. And basically any conflict anyone has within the town is settled in the Thunderdome, which is this awesome cage match. And early in the movie, Mad Max gets into a conflict with another person in the town, and they have this really cool fight in the Thunderdome where they have like bungee cords on them, and they're jumping around and they're bouncing up and like grabbing weapons off the edge of the Thunderdome cage, and it is pretty sweet. And then 30 minutes into the movie, he gets banished to the wasteland. Like he's out of the city, out of the town, and he's wandering the wasteland. I'm like, okay, like this is right now in the wasteland. That's pretty normal for Mad Max. And he comes across this group of children. And this is where the other movie comes in, the original script, because originally this was supposed to be a Lord of the Flies style movie. And that's kind of where the movie then takes off, is you have Mad Max interacting with this group of children who are in the wasteland, who are trying to decide, do we stay here? They're waiting for this captain, this savior to come help them, or do they go back and try to find civilization? And the movie tonally shifts. Like it almost feels like you're watching the part of Hook where they're with the Lost Boys. Like it just has this completely different vibe to it. Mad Max is a real jerk to these children. Eventually, he just convinces them that they need to leave. They need to travel back to whatever civilization is left. And actually, the ending itself felt very Fury Road. It had some pretty awesome car stunts to it. I would say even better than the Road Warrior. And it had some stunts where I was surprised people did not die. Like this is all pre-CG. There is one sequence where one of the bad guys, he jumped in a single take from like 4 different cars. Like they were moving at, I don't know how fast they were. He just jumped from one to the other, to the other, to the other. I'm like, that is crazy. Like it was a Buster Keaton style stunt, which I thought was pretty awesome. So it's an odd movie, but I definitely think if you like that Mad Max world and you want to see kind of the early beginnings of what Fury Road became, this is definitely worth checking out. And the only thing I could remember from it was that Tina Turner was in it. So apparently I had seen it before, but couldn't remember anything else.
That's awesome. I remember really liking it, but I don't remember it very well at all.
It's definitely an interesting watch after seeing Fury Road, because you kind of have in your
Yeah.
mind what Mad Max is, and Fury Road feels like such an explosion off of that, right? But then when you
Yeah.
see Beyond Thunderdome, you're like, oh no, there's more of a progression here than what you remember, for sure.
Yeah, right. Fury Road was not some sort of like created out of nothing.
Right. For
There were beginnings.
Yep. My number 4 is a listener suggested movie. This episode is very Josh heavy because this was suggested to me specifically by Josh, who we read his email earlier in this episode. It's from 2017 and it's called Super Dark Times. It's a drama, I would say. It's a thriller of sorts, directed by Kevin Phillips, starring 3 actors that you're not going to recognize for sure. But it's set in the 90s, and the premise, I kind of don't want to spoil because I liked it. And
All right.
kind of what I liked about it is it led you down a path that seemed very predictable, and then they subtly over the course of time spun it on its head. And I liked that about it. It wasn't like this moment in the movie where everything you thought was going to happen like just spins a 180 on you. It just like slowly does the 180 on you until you get 3/4 of the way into the movie and you're like, wow, this movie just changed on me, and I didn't realize it did that because it did it so subtly over the course of time. And I will tell you, it's about kids in the 90s who are 90s kids doing 90s kids things. There's
Wait, does this take place in the 90s,
it
James?
takes place in the 90s. It's definitely
Okay, just want to clarify.
a 90s set movie with things from the 90s in it.
The 1990s.
The 1990s.
Okay, cool.
1990. It's
the 1590s.
It would be a very different movie if it was the 1690s. I enjoyed it. I wish I could think of things that I want to say out loud about it, and I don't feel like I've given you guys enough to like motivate you guys or more people to watch this. But I think it's
about the 90s.
Yeah, if you're a 90s kid, then drop this one at the top of your watch list. No, it's a good movie. It's not going to blow your mind or anything, but it was a fun watch that subverted expectations quite a bit, for sure.
Quite a bit refers to a significant amount.
I have a question for both of you guys.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. So Zach and I were born in the same year, 83.
Mm-hmm.
James, you were born a little before that in the 70s. Are we 80s kids? Are we 90s kids? Or are we both?
You're
James
both.
is an 80s kid.
You're both.
James is an 80s kid.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why am I? I'm both. What are you talking about?
Well, no, it's just more clear cut for you. Because you were a teenager in the 90s.
Sure. Yeah. That's true.
Right?
That is true. Yeah.
So like, it just depends on what you're talking about, right? When would you have been in E.T. or the Goonies? For James, that would be the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You guys,
For Kyle,
were
80s, 90s.
you guys were barely born when E.T. and the Goonies came out.
I don't think we were born at all when E.T. came out.
E.T. came out
Right,
in '84.
Okay, so we were a year old.
Right. Yeah. Whereas I watched those in theaters and remember them, but barely.
Yeah.
So
All right, thanks for clarifying that.
My number 4 is from 1932. It is Grand Hotel. This is
I just picked this up. I just picked this up on Blu-ray. I've never seen it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I've never seen it. It's a best picture winner, and I'm trying to collect all the best picture winners. So
Exactly. That's why I watched it. It was a best picture winner. I would have loved to watch it on Blu-ray. That would have been awesome. I need to start checking with you first.
Yep.
Hey, James, do you have the best picture winner of 1932 on Blu-ray? Oh, I do.
That's how that would have gone, apparently.
Yeah, exactly.
It's got a great cast. It has Greta Garbo, John Barrymore, Lionel Barrymore, Joan Crawford, amongst others.
Are those Barrymores related to Drew?
Yes, grandparents and granduncle.
Okay,
I think. Quote me not. This movie I really enjoyed. It all takes place in a hotel in Berlin, and it just has a bunch of different characters with very different stories, and the stories interweave as they mingle in the hotel, and so you follow all of their various plot lines. And yeah, I really liked it a lot. All the plot lines were winners. They were very different from each other. There's a murder. There's one guy who's going to die in like 3 weeks, and so he's blowing all of his cash in this really ritzy hotel. There was a lot to like in this movie. A lot of it was really fun. I had a great time with it. So yeah, I enjoyed Grand Hotel quite a bit. And to think this is just a few years after they get sound in the movies is really impressive to me. So
do you think I will like
James?
it?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's a movie before 1960.
Right.
So automatically I think that you won't like it. But it's a good movie from before 1960. So yeah, I'm going to say you'll like it.
All right. Fair enough.
all right. My number 4 is from 2021, and this is The Dig. And actually, if I had reordered my list, I would have switched Mad Max and The Dig, but here's where they are. This movie takes place in England in the late 30s. It stars Carey Mulligan, who owns a several acres of property, and she has on her property these large mounds, which she thinks are burial mounds or maybe contain some sort of archaeological finds. So she hires Rafe Fiennes, to
Elijah 4.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to spend every Monday evening practicing every name I'm going to possibly say on this podcast.
Oh, amazing.
Anyway, she hires Rafe Fiennes to excavate these mounds and see if there's anything of value or worth finding in there. And it's actually kind of interesting to sort of see them excavate the mounds and sort of what they find, and kind of then something significant is found, and there's sort of the politics over who has claim to this find. And at the whole time you have the kind of the tremors of World War II in the background. You know, people are starting to talk about will there be war in Europe at the same time that they're doing this archaeological dig. So it's kind of an interesting setting there. What got kind of odd for me with this movie is about halfway through they introduce Lily James as another excavator and kind of give her this whole subplot about her not being in love with her husband and falling in love with another guy. And that just kind of seems out of left field for a movie about, you know, digging up artifacts. I know this is based on a true story, and I guess that love triangle is somewhat part of the story also, but it just sort of seemed out of left field. It didn't hurt the movie at all, but it was definitely a departure from what I was expecting. James, I think you described this movie as a cotton topper or a cotton pleaser or cotton header.
Sure.
Something old people would like.
It's a movie for cotton tops.
Cotton tops, that's a go. So I think my review for this movie on Letterboxd is your grandmother's favorite movie of 2021.
See, you agree. It's a cotton top movie.
Yeah, no, it's very pleasant. Yeah.
It's good. I mean, I didn't dislike it. It's a good drama with good performances.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's very watchable.
Yeah, for sure. It's a Netflix movie too, so anybody who just wants an easy watch. Although there's something to the ending that's kind of, I'm not going to say I dropped tear or anything, but it's dramatic at the end.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, it's not too mellow.
Right.
But it doesn't go too high in the drama either.
Yeah, it's odd to watch Promising Young Woman and then watch The Dig, because Carey Mulligan is just
very much
night and day different in those two movies.
Yeah. It's almost like she's an actor and this is her job.
Almost like.
Almost.
All right. My number 3 is a documentary titled Crip Camp, a Disability Revolution. I think Zach has seen this. Is that right, Zach?
No.
No.
I just
not.
want to.
Oh, okay. Well, it's on Netflix. It's ready for you whenever you're ready for it. I enjoyed this way more than My Octopus Teacher. I don't know why. Academy voters don't agree with me, but whatever. There it is. This is a documentary about some disabled people, some mentally, some physically, who have a summer camp in the 1960s, I believe, that they can go to and be themselves, right? Normally, in this time period, it's not a good time to be disabled. Like, there are not handicap access ramps. You get sent to a school that is basically just a couple rooms in the back of a mental asylum, like literally a mental asylum. They're sending the handicapped students that direction instead of like giving them a classroom in the normal school. It's just not, it's not a society where people are accepting of people who are different than them when it comes to this topic, for sure. I mean, we weren't a society that accepted people of different races at the time. So we definitely weren't accepting of people with cerebral palsy, for example, or some kind of ailment like that. And so this documentary is about these kids who go to this camp that's run by hippies who are just kind of there to give the kids a good time for the summer while they're at the camp. And they're just able to kick back and be themselves and interact with each other and feel normal, and also hang out with these adults that don't obsess over them like their parents do, right? Their parents are very protective of them because of how the world perceives them. And so when they go to this camp, it's a little dangerous. They're doing things that their parents wouldn't allow them to do. They're smoking pot. They're making out with the counselors, you know what I mean, who are able-bodied people. It's just a different world for them, right? It's like it's as if they're being treated like normal teenagers, and so they love this camp. Kyle, what were you gonna say?
Well, I mean, I feel like counselors making out with the campers is a line right there.
Sure, it's the 60s, so it's like there are a bunch of hippies. I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it happened, and they don't seem too damaged by it. In fact, they seem inspired by it, I would say, to see what life would be if they were just treated like everybody else, essentially. And so that's what I expected the documentary to be from beginning to end. And it's definitely that in the first half. I feel like I've said this about a couple movies in this episode, but in the back half, it changes. It's something different, and it's not a devious thing. It's a very inspiring story of what kids in their situation are given an opportunity to see what life would be if they were just accepted as normal. And when they get back to real life after the camp, they decide that they're just not going to accept this kind of treatment for the rest of their life. And they get swept into other movements during the 60s as far as equal rights go. And there's like a much bigger story to be told around these kids who attended this camp in this specific time. So I liked the fact that the story was bigger than advertised. And I also liked that they had a bunch of footage from the camp from the 60s, shot on film. It looked beautiful. And they intercut interviews from today back and forth. And it was sometimes hard to tell what was archival footage and what wasn't. And I thought that was super impressive the way they did that. I also think there's some recreations in there mixed in, and it's hard to tell when they're actually recreating something versus, actual footage from the time. I just thought that was really well done. It gets a little sappy at the very end, which is what keeps it from being like a 4.5 or a 5-star movie for me. But it is definitely a solid 4. And if you like documentaries or you like inspiring stories, you should definitely check it out. My number 3, Crip Camp.
Well, it is certainly on my list.
I am shocked this did not win the Oscar. I mean, it's produced by the Obamas, of all people. How did this not win the Oscar?
They won the Oscar last year, didn't they?
Yeah, for like, a basketball animated short. I mean, come on.
No. What was the one about the Chinese factory that was like merging with like a?
You're right. Did that win last year?
Oh yeah.
I thought it did. Did it not?
It definitely got nominated. I don't remember if it won, but that was good too, for sure. The Chinese factory documentary. That was also a long.
Cool. Okay, my number 3 is from 2020, and it's called Clouds. And you can watch it on Disney Plus. It's rated PG-13, and I was totally taken by this movie. I was surprised that I liked it so much. It's a live action Disney kind of produced film. I thought it was going to be cheesy, and it wasn't. It was incredibly well acted and genuine. It is about a young teenager. His name is Zachary David Sobiek, and he has cancer. And he thought it was getting better, but then he finds out that it's getting much, much worse. So he has a girlfriend. He's got a best friend. And it's about him dealing with knowing that he only has a few months to live. His friends and family dealing with that same thing. His mom is played by Neve Campbell. It's based on a true story. He wrote a song that he got to perform, and kind of, I think you'd recognize the song. It played on the radio and stuff like that. Anyways, I found all the performances very genuine and moving, and I really liked this movie. It won me over. I wasn't expecting to. I thought it was going to be cheesy. It was not. It was a great watch. So it was Clouds. I gave it 4.5 stars.
I've
Nice.
never heard
You
of
said that was from this year.
Yeah, 2020.
Okay.
Yeah.
My number 3 is a Western from 1959, and this is Rio Bravo. And this movie is well known for being sort of an answer or a retort to High Noon, the Gary Cooper Western. In High Noon, Gary Cooper plays a sheriff who has to face off with a bandit at noon. And he basically spends the whole movie trying to get other people to stand with him against this bandit. And no one will help him. And come noon, he has to stand alone. And John Wayne and Howard Hawks saw High Noon, and they were like, no sheriff with any self-respect would ever ask anyone for help. No sheriff with any self-respect would ever, need that. So they decided to make their own movie, and they call it Rio Bravo, which is about the same thing. In this, John Wayne plays a sheriff, and early in the movie, he captures the brother of a bandit and has that bandit locked up in jail. And the rest of the bandit crew, the gang, is saying, hey, we're going to come back. We're going to break him out. And you be ready. And in this case, John Wayne is ready. And everyone's coming to him and saying, hey, do you need help? Let me help you. And John Wayne's just saying to everyone, no, you can't. Don't help me. I don't need help. I can do this on my own. This is really like a study in machoism from the John Wayne perspective. It ends in this shootout, and everyone comes to the rescue anyway. But at no point does John Wayne ever have to grovel and ask for help. He all can do it by himself. This movie felt like, I guess, like what a 4-quadrant big budget picture movie would be in the late 50s. Like seems like their equivalent of like an MCU movie. Because you've got John Wayne in the main role. Dean Martin and Ricky Nelson are in it. And they get to sing a song. Angie Dickinson plays the love interest, even though she is literally half the age of John Wayne. He's 50, she's 25, she's still the love interest. There's shootouts, there's comedy, there's action, there's music. It just kind of feels like we're gonna hit every note so that way everyone can enjoy this movie. And it is a very fun and watchable movie, but it definitely feels a little bit dated, even though it's enjoyable.
Yeah, I liked that movie quite a bit. I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'll say that at this point in my list, I'm still not into like my movies I really liked. These are all movies that I enjoyed, but haven't quite broken through yet.
Wow.
Okay.
I have a pretty milquetoast list this week.
Interesting. Just 2 more movies. We're almost there.
It's not a tumor.
My number 2 is from
Contrived.
from 2021. And it's Raya and the Last Dragon. It's been a while since I've seen this movie.
And it's been a while.
These are so set up.
Contrived.
I don't remember much about it.
I can't remember anything.
I think you're using those quite a bit, James.
I am.
Quite a bit refers to a significant amount.
But I enjoyed this movie quite a bit.
Quite a bit refers to a significant amount.
It's an animated movie on Disney Plus, and Raya and the Last Dragon. In looking at my Letterboxd review from over a month ago, I definitely had a good time with this movie. I remember mostly, this is not a great thing to say about a movie, but what I remember most about it is just how different it looked from a lot of other animated movies. Like even like Pixar movies, the colors in this movie just like popped out of the screen for me. And I was watching it at home. Like I imagine on a big screen, this would have looked absolutely amazing. The colors, the character designs, the animation in general, it was just like a visual feast from one side to the other. The storyline, on the other hand, was predictable and a little cliched here and there. Like you're definitely going to see plot elements that just feel, pulled out of the plot playbook of, this type of movie. And I mean, it's a kid's movie, so what do you expect? It's not going to be The Sixth Sense with like some huge twist or anything like that. It is at its core a kid's movie, but it's one that I enjoyed watching. It kind of felt like the movie I wished Mulan was, if Mulan was an animated movie. Oh wait, Mulan is an animated movie, and a much better one than the live action version. But yeah, if they were to remake this one in the same style and slap the Mulan name on it and make it like a 3D update of Mulan, I think it would have done much better. But they didn't do that. That's not the movie I watched. I watched Raya and the Last Dragon, and I had a lot of fun with it from one side to the other. And I think it's worth checking out if you're a fan of animation and just good kids movies. This will be, so far it's probably my favorite kids movie that I've seen in 2021. Not that I've seen too many of them, but this would be at the top for sure.
I definitely one that I will check out at some point. Isn't it like $30 right now to watch it?
Yes, it's not cheap.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait on that.
I'm gonna wait on it. Yeah.
My number 2 is from 2021. It's rated R. It was on HBO Max, and it's 4 hours long. It is Zack Snyder's Justice League.
You watched
from 2021
the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League?
I did, absolutely.
And it's your number 2?
I gave it 4.5 stars.
Have you seen movies before?
Yes. In fact, I've seen this movie before. When it first came out, Justice League, I didn't like Justice League.
Yeah, nobody liked
it maybe
the original Justice League.
Yeah, it wasn't good. It was probably a little bit better than Batman v Superman. But I remember not liking it that much. And this one came out and I was curious. And so I watched it. I did watch it over the course of 3 nights. And it's actually broken up into kind of acts. So I think it lends itself to that. I think it's totally fine not to watch it as a 4-hour thing. But I honestly found myself really enjoying this. And I think it fixed so many of the things that I didn't like about the original Justice League. And it gave me a consistency of tone and a fleshed out nature of a lot of these characters that I found very refreshing without the like cheesiness of the first one. I mean, I could talk for a long time about it because it's a 4-hour movie and there's a lot going on, but there's a lot of other people that have talked at length about it. And if you two haven't seen it, I don't need to ramble, but I will say, I think he fixed Justice League and I really, really enjoyed this movie. It gave me a very enjoyable 4 hours of watching this film. So I was totally into it. And I'm glad I watched it. Now he's going to now release the black and white version of the film, which I don't think I will watch. But I'm not opposed to it. I'm not mad at it because I did like this movie. I could see myself watching Zack Snyder's Justice League again at some point. It was a good superhero film.
Interesting. Did you see The Watchmen by Zack Snyder?
I did, and I did not like that movie.
Yeah.
I found it to be just kind of amoral in an oppressive way. If I could live in any world, it would not be Zack Snyder's Watchmen. I just don't want to live in that universe.
Isn't the actual Watchmen world pretty amoral?
Oh, totally.
Okay.
He did a great job adapting it to the movie. I will say I way preferred the Watchmen TV show. Have you watched that yet, guys?
That's great.
It's so good. James, you haven't watched it yet.
No, I tried to watch it. I got like 7 or 8 episodes in and just haven't finished it, and it has not caught me at all. And I don't know why.
9 episodes.
I don't know why. I know I'm very close to the
far
end,
in.
and I just haven't finished it because I couldn't be bothered. And I don't know why.
Interesting.
You guys are not the only ones that love it. Lots of people I respect love that. I probably should just restart it from the beginning and like devote full attention to it.
No,
but
I think in your defense, there is a ton to watch, right? Movies, TV shows. If you are 7 episodes into something, you're not enjoying it, I don't think there's any reason that you have to try it again.
Except he only has like 2 episodes left.
Yeah, but that's 2 episodes he watched something else. That's a movie right there he could be watching.
Maybe it saves itself in the last 2 episodes. The problem is I have so much distance from it now that there's I feel like it's maybe a pacing thing. Like I didn't just binge it. I watched it and then waited and then watched it and then waited.
I binged it.
Yeah. Maybe if I binge it, then, just give it like a solid 2 days of, constant, that maybe I'll get in the rhythm of the show. But I don't know.
I've heard people put it in the top 10 of TV ever.
I know. That's what confuses me. And it's not like just critics. It's people that I respect who have said that.
Yeah.
And so, and it like has a soundtrack by Trent Reznor. It has lots of things going for it that I should like. And I just didn't get there yet. But
yeah. Okay. So Zack Snyder's Justice League is my number 2.
Zach, I have a Justice League question for you.
Okay.
I have only seen the Wonder Woman movies and Aquaman.
Okay.
Should I bother with Justice League,
the
Zack Snyder cut?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
All right.
For sure. It's better than Aquaman. It's not as good as Wonder Woman, and it's way better than Wonder Woman 1984.
Okay.
That's
maybe I'll try it over a couple days.
Yeah, definitely don't feel like you need to watch it for 4 hours straight.
No, well, I just didn't know if I want to watch it at all. But
sure.
Maybe I can break it up over a couple days.
Yeah.
All right. My number 2 is a 1998 animated film, and this is The Prince of Egypt. I believe this is one of the first DreamWorks productions, but I could be wrong.
I think this is early days.
Yeah, definitely late 90s. And this is a kid's family movie about the biblical story of Moses. I'm not going to get into the plot of Moses because, I think either most people know it or they can look it up. But it has a stacked cast, and I did not realize this till the credits. I'm just going to read out some names for you. Here's who does voices in this movie. Val Kilmer, Rafe Fiennes, Michelle Pfeiffer, Sandra Bullock, Jeff Goldblum, Danny Glover, Patrick Stewart, Helen Mirren, Steve Martin, Martin Short, Chiwetel Elijah, amongst others. No, he did not make this one. Sorry, other Kyle. I really enjoyed this movie. And actually, one reason we watched it was because my son has become super interested in religions. We got him a world religions book, and he's seen like the story of Moses in there, and he wanted to learn more. I'm like, all right, let's try this one out. It's got really awesome animation. The characters definitely have that kind of like 90s Disney look to them. I think DreamWorks wasn't quite sure how to make their own style yet.
Kind of angular.
Yes, very angular. But all the backgrounds were really cool. They have these scenes of the building of these pyramids and monuments with like just thousands of people on screen. They actually have some a bit where like the hieroglyphs kind of come to life to tell the story. That was really cool. The songs, I wouldn't say they're necessarily memorable, but I do remember them being good. Like I enjoyed them. I can't sing one for you now, but I did like them. Hans Zimmer did the music, and the story doesn't shy away from the movie doesn't shy away from the story of Moses and like the plagues. And, it's Old Testament. Old Testament kind of goes there. And the movie kind of goes there too. Definitely my son had some questions like about what was happening to those kids where there was no blood over the door. We kind of had to explain that to him. I was like, but like that's the story. Anyway, so I really enjoyed it. But the family overall enjoyed it. And I would say that this is probably the best adaptation of a Metallica song I've ever seen.
Sure.
I actually found, I sent this to Zach, I found a video where someone took Creeping Death and then set it to Prince of Egypt, but like lined up all the images to the song. And it was actually pretty sweet.
It was well done.
Yeah.
Interesting. You'll have to send that to me.
I will forward that to you.
All right. It's good to know it's not a Zach exclusive.
Yeah, the Prince of Egypt is great.
Yeah.
My number one, the most favorite movie out of the last 10 that I've seen is from 1974. It's a thriller titled The Parallax View. Have either of you guys seen this?
I've been meaning to watch
heard
it.
of this. Yeah, go ahead.
It's great. It's directed by Alan J. Pakula, who also directed All the President's Men and Clute. I've seen All the President's Men. I have not seen Clute. Supposedly, this movie, The Parallax View, is part of like an unofficial political paranoia trilogy that this director, Alan J. Pakula, created. It stars Warren Beatty and other names that I didn't recognize, but Warren Beatty is definitely the main draw as far as the cast goes. And I had a strange experience watching this movie. Like it was in my watch list and it was ranked highly and it was available to watch on Prime. And I was like, I need one more movie for my top 10, last 10. I'm going to watch this thriller from the 70s with no context other than the interesting looking poster.
Wow.
And the movie started and it was very 70s. I mean, like the kind of 70s movie that just screams when this was made, right? Like it and not in a good way, like in a way where you're just like, okay, this is a movie I don't really know much about. It was highly ranked on Letterboxd, but like, is this ever going to feel like not a movie that was made in the 70s, and isn't like The Godfather or something that's stood the test of time, right? And the movie just kind of, within the first 10 or 15 minutes, I'm like, I'm not going to like this. I'm going to finish it because I finish everything, but I'm not, it's never going to just not feel like a bad 70s movie to me. And the movie just slowly sucked me into the plot. And the movie is deceivingly simple at the beginning, like not only in the way it's presenting itself, from a plot standpoint, but also the visuals just feel very my idea of a cliche from the time. And by the end of the movie, there's this climax at a specific location that is just one of the best shot things. One of the frame, the composition of the frame, shadows, assassins, intrigue, chase, just super interesting stuff happening in the last half an hour of this movie. The way it ends just completely shocked me. It makes sense in the context of when this movie was made, but it's definitely not a decision they would make today, no matter what. Like, this would have to be like a hardcore indie movie that doesn't care about audience reaction to have the type of ending that this movie has. You can see it in the poster, but there's this moment in the movie where these people who are in these stadium risers are like lifting up cards to make faces, and they're like entertaining an audience this way. And somehow they like work that into the plot. It was just super well done. And it was a builder for me, right? Something that I had a medium expectation for until I hit play. Then my expectation went through the ground. And then the movie just won me back scene after scene. Not one scene that totally changed everything, a gradual progression of greatness. And definitely would rank high on my list of 70s thrillers, maybe even make a list of like all-time thrillers eventually. I'm looking forward to rewatching it someday and catching up with Clute because I enjoyed All the President's Men, and now I enjoyed The Parallax View. Maybe Clute is great as well. I don't know. But yeah, that's why it's my number one on this top 10 last 10.
Do you own it on Blu-ray?
I don't. I watched it on Prime, but I would love to own it on Blu-ray. You want to sell it to me?
Get on that. Yeah, I'll sell it to you.
All right.
You can have mine.
Let's do it.
James, I haven't seen this, but can I recommend to you 2 movies that sound like you would enjoy in the kind of similar vein?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Have you seen The Long Goodbye?
The Samuel L. Jackson movie?
No, this is Elliot Gould in the 70s. It's a Philip Marlowe noir.
No, I don't believe I've seen it.
All right, check that out.
Okay.
And then 3 Days of the Condor.
Seen it.
You've seen it? All right.
That's good.
James, I'll warn you that The Long Goodbye is the movie that Inherent Vice is based off of.
Oh.
They're very similar.
I don't like Inherent
And
Vice.
he hates Inherent Vice.
Okay. I do think that The Long Goodbye does have more of a plot. Where like Inherent Vice, you're just kind of living in that world, which I enjoyed, but I know that there's not a lot. It's just kind of odd in that sense. Long Goodbye does have resolution to some extent.
Okay.
Okay, my number one film from this last 10 top 10 is from 1938, You Can't Take It With You. And this is a Frank Capra film. And it stars Jimmy Stewart and also stars Jean Arthur and Lionel Barrymore. And I was totally surprised at how charming this film was. The basic plot is you have a tough as nails, capitalistic, rich guy whose son falls in love with a lowly worker at their company. And he goes to dinner to meet her family, and her family is this extremely eccentric. They're basically these freewheeling, do whatever you want, whenever you want type of people that don't care at all what other people think. So they're like proto hippies, right? But this is the 30s, and so it's old money meets no money. And Jimmy Stewart is kind of caught in the middle. And I found this movie made me laugh out loud several times, which comedies don't age well normally. And this movie is, 80 years old? But it made me laugh out loud several times by just the clever writing and the great comedic timing of a lot of its actors. And I super enjoyed it. I thought it was a totally watchable Frank Capra movie. And I had a great time with it. Really good cast. It's a big cast. There's a lot going on. Some of the characters are zanier than others, but this is definitely a movie that I will revisit in the future because I thought it was a really fun time. It's called You Can't Take It With You.
Best Picture winner?
It was in that time when I was watching a lot of Best Picture winners.
Okay.
Now I don't remember. I think it did win Best Picture. I'm going to verify while I stall for time.
Did Frank Capra exclusively work with Jimmy Stewart?
No.
Okay.
No. It did not win Best Picture.
All right.
But he won Best Director and it won Best Picture.
So it did win.
Yes, it did. Yes.
I'm glad we cleared up that it did not win Best Picture before it did.
Yeah.
All right. My number one is a French sci-fi noir film from 1965 called Alphaville, and this is directed by Jean-Luc Godard, who is a very well-known French director of that time. This is only the second movie of his that I've seen, but I really enjoyed this movie. There's a lot going on. Basic plot is a guy who's playing like a detective or an agent by the name of Lemmy Caution is sent to the city of Alphaville, which is this futuristic city that is run by a computer called Alpha 60. And the computer Alpha 60 only makes logical decisions for the inhabitants of the city. It basically decides what would be the most logical thing that should happen, and the computer makes that decision, and all the inhabitants of the city then follow the computer's orders to kind of make their own utopia. Here's the thing about this movie. The plot does not matter because this movie is actually a satire. Jean-Luc Godard was seeing all these sci-fi and like secret agent movies coming out from America in the 60s, and he wanted to make his own like French new wave version of it and kind of not necessarily poke fun at it, but sort of turn the tropes on its end. So, for example, the detective, Lemmy Caution, is played by a famous French actor, Eddie Constantine, who starred in a series of detective dramas playing the character of Lemmy Caution. So he's kind of having this guy reprise his role in this satirical movie. It's like if you cast Peter Falk in a movie playing a guy named Columbo, who's a detective, but you're not really like having him actually play the Columbo character. So right there, you're taking on the end. The plot itself has elements of Brave New World in 1984, James Bond all mixed into it. There'll be scenes where like you'd expect to be a shootout, and there'd be a bunch of like quick shots of people just falling over, where Jean-Luc Godard's like saying, "I'm not going to show you the action scene. I'm just going to show you the results of the action scene," which is something that is like very that happens a lot now in filmmaking. I feel like you watch what was the Joaquin Phoenix movie from a couple years ago? No, I'm Not Here or something like that. The one where he plays kind of the hitman.
Where he plays a hitman? Oh,
or
yeah.
Or like
yeah.
a cleaner.
Right. It's from the director of We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Exactly. Yes. Correct. So in that movie, there's a scene where he's taking out a bunch of people in a hallway with a hammer, but the whole thing is shot from like a black and white fuzzy hallway cam, right? The kind of deal like let's detach ourselves from the violence. Godard was doing this with Alphaville in 1965. Like, how can we show violence in action from a very detached way? The computer itself is played by a cancer patient who had, or these are the voices, who had his larynx removed and had like one of those talk boxes. So it's this very like loud, low, guttural sound for the computer. And this movie is fun, but it's only fun if you realize that it's a satire. And that's something where I didn't realize that halfway through, or for the first half, I was trying to take it seriously. I'm like, what is going on in this movie? And then honestly, I was scrolling on my phone, reading about the movie as I was watching it. And when I kind of read that what Godard was trying to do with his movie, I'm like, oh, this all makes sense now. And then I was totally immersed in it and loved it. And I kind of want to watch this movie again, knowing what I know now. It's pretty cool.
The movie you were referring to, the Joaquin Phoenix movie, You Were Never Really Here.
You Were Never Really Here. Because he also did that weird documentary, like I'm Not There or something.
I'm
like
Still Here is what that one's
I'm
called.
Still Here. So it's easy to confuse those two.
For sure. Yeah. Very different movies, but similar titles.
Very much.
For sure.
This movie, Alphaville, like there's so much shades of the aesthetic of Blade Runner and like Matrix in this. Like you can just see what other sci-fi movies borrowed from. Just kind of the look and aesthetic of this movie.
Yeah, I'm definitely lacking in the like French New Wave category. I'm not sure I've fully found my way in. Does it feel like this is a way in kind of movie? Or is it like not the best example of French New Wave? You probably shouldn't start here type of thing.
I think it has more plot than a normal French New Wave movie.
Okay.
But it has the filmmaking techniques. So yeah, I think it might be a good way to kind of dip your toe into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely a movie that's on my short list because it's very close to a movie that is on like every list I need to watch.
Yeah. I know, Zach, you want to see this. Hopefully I didn't give you too much, but I hope you can enjoy it now.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great.
I think that's it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode 477 of the Cinereelists. We appreciate your listenership. Don't forget, you can always send us an email to heyguys@cinereelists.com. REEL with an S on the end. Send a comment, a question, a list suggestion, a movie suggestion, any of those types of things. Maybe send your most recent top 10, last 10. If you've never done it, it's a fun exercise. Just take a look at your Letterboxd or remember the last 10 movies you've watched, put them in the order in which you prefer them, and fire off the list to us. We'd love to discuss it on the podcast. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Cinereelists. You could leave us an Apple Podcast review. If you haven't done that yet, this is the end of the podcast. So you can just stop right now, click that little leave a review button at the bottom of the show notes, and there you go. You're in the right zone to leave us an Apple Podcast review. Next week, we will be talking the Netflix movie. It's an animated movie titled The Mitchells versus the Machines, which I've been hearing good things about. Looking forward to that. You could also follow the podcast on social media at Cinereelists on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or you can follow me on my personal Twitter or Letterboxd account at YoJRB.
You can follow me on Twitter or Letterboxd at Shaubin.
You can find me on Letterboxd at PeterSKB. I also want to plug the YouTube channel because some of us will be recording some Cinereelists 11ths for movies that didn't quite make this list.
Sure. Definitely. Check out the YouTube channel. Throw us a subscribe. I want to get to 100 subscribers there. I feel like we have too many initiatives going. But if we can get to 100 subscribers, then we don't have to have like an ugly URL. We can have like youtube.com/Cinereelists. So that's the goal over there. Throw us a subscribe. A pity subscribe. It's fine. We accept them. Regardless, we'll see you guys next time. Until then, keep it Cinereel.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.